So let's talk about something that's, well, a really key concept in database design, but one that sometimes gets a little overlooked. I'm talking about the alternate key in MySQL. It's kind of the unsung hero that keeps your data clean, consistent, and reliable. Let's dive right in. We all learn about the primary key, right? It's supposed to be the one, the ultimate, unique identifier for any record. It's the star player of the team. But is it always enough? What happens when you need another way to guarantee a record is unique? Like, what if your user wants to log in with their email address, not some random user ID they've never even seen? That's exactly where our story begins. So here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at why we even need to go beyond the primary key. Then we're going to meet the whole family of candidate keys. After that, we'll get our hands dirty and put it all into practice with some actual code. And finally, we'll see it in action and talk about why this is all so important for building really solid databases. So seriously, why do we need this? Well, in any good database, you have to be absolutely sure you can nail down every single record without any mistakes. But think about it. What happens when your main identifier, your primary key, isn't the most convenient or logical one to use in a particular situation? Okay, let's stick with that sports analogy. Imagine your primary key. Let's say it's a student ID. That's your team captain. It's awesome for all the internal database stuff, right? But you've also got other star players on the bench. Think about a unique email address or a unique phone number. They are just as good at identifying a specific student, and sometimes they're the player you actually want to send out on the field to get the job done. To really get what an alternate key is, we first need to understand the family it comes from, and it all starts with this idea of a candidate key. A candidate key is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's any column or even a group of columns that could be the primary identifier. It's a candidate for the job. So in a typical user table, your user ID could be a candidate, sure, but so could the email column and so could the username column, because all of them have to be unique. A single table can have a bunch of these candidates all vying for that top spot. Now, from that pool of perfectly good candidates, you, the one designing the database, have to make a choice. You have to pick one. Just one. And the one you pick gets crowned the primary key. It becomes the main, official, number one identifier that all the other parts of the database will use to build relationships. So, what about those other candidates? The ones that are totally unique and perfectly capable, but just didn't get chosen to be the primary key? Well, those become our alternate keys. You can think of them as the runners-up, but here's the thing. They are every bit as unique and just as powerful as the primary key. This slide really just nails the difference. It all boils down to choice. You can have only one primary key per table, period, but you can have as many alternate keys as you need. Here's a great way to think about it. Your social security number is like your primary key. It's the main government ID for you. But your passport number and your email address, those are like alternate keys. They also uniquely identify you, just in different situations. All right, that's enough theory. Let's see how this actually looks in the real world, in the code. How do we tell MySQL, hey, this column right here, I need you to make sure it's always unique? The magic, the secret ingredient, it all comes down to one simple keyword: unique. By applying what's called a unique constraint to a column, you're basically telling the database, you must enforce uniqueness here, no exceptions. And by doing that, you've effectively turned that column into an alternate key. When you're creating a brand new table, it is so simple. You can see here we define our student ID as the primary key, just like we always do. Then, for our email column, we just tack on the unique keyword right at the end of its definition. Boom, done. Just like that, MySQL will now block any attempt to have two students with the same email. And what if your table already exists? No problem. You can use the alter table command. We're telling MySQL to add a constraint. It's good practice to give it a name, like unique phone, so it's easy to find later. And then we just specify that it's a unique constraint on the phone column. And just like that, our table now has two alternate keys. So we've laid down the law in our database. Now let's try to break it. Honestly, this is the best way to prove that our alternate key is actually doing its job and protecting the integrity of our data. Okay, here's our simple students table. You can see student ID is the primary key, and we've already set up that unique rule on the email column. Everything looks good so far. So let's ask the critical question. We already have Alice in our database, and her email is alice@example.com. What's going to happen if we try to add a totally new record, but we use that exact same email address? So here we go. We run this insert command. We're trying to add a new student with a new phone number. But look, we're trying to reuse alice@example.com. Now, because we set that unique constraint, the database should say, no way. And there it is. MySQL throws an error, and it tells us exactly what went wrong. Duplicate entry alice@example.com for keys students.email. That error message is actually a success story. It's our alternate key doing its job perfectly, acting as a guardian for our data's integrity. Okay, so we've covered the what and the how. Let's wrap this up by talking about the why. I mean, why should we even go to the trouble of defining these extra unique keys? What's the big picture? So why bother? Well, it is all about data integrity, first and foremost. Alternate keys make your data way more reliable and consistent, but they also give you more options, more efficient ways to look up records, because you're not always going to have the primary key just sitting there. Honestly, it's a pretty simple step that leads to a much more professional and robust database design. Look, if there's one crucial thing to take away from all this, it's this. Stop thinking of alternate keys as some kind of optional extra. They're not. They are absolutely fundamental to building data systems you can actually trust. If you have a piece of data that must be unique, an email, a username, a product SKU, it needs a unique constraint. It's that simple. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. Take a look at your own projects, the ones you're working on right now. Where could an alternate key make your data just that little bit more solid, a little more trustworthy? It's a small change, for sure, but it can make a really big difference.